DFS, DJ Nation, what is up? What is happening? We are back again for week 18, and this week looks gross, to put it mildly, for the main slate. Anyways, on Sunday, the best slate actually looks like the Saturday slate, the two-game slate with the Chiefs and Raiders. That total is like 52, and then you got the Titans and Jaguars game. They're playing for something, but the Sunday slate, I don't think there's a total over 43 for that. Now there is some good scores, at least for the team totals on one side. But so we're going to try to parse our way through this slate. Obviously, news is going to be critical. It's very much like the NBA slates, where we're going to be waiting for news on players, who's going to play, who's not, for these teams that aren't in and who's not. And I think that's going to be some of the most important part of this slate.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't even think we can, fully dive into this slate really, like we normally do, just because we don't know. There's a handful of teams that we talked about right before we hopped on that could rest starters that may or may not do so. And I think if we get a better beat on what teams are going to do as we get closer, it's really going to change the slate. Like you've got Bengals, Vikings, teams like that could are good offenses that could end up saying, hey, we're just going to play our guys for a half. And we'll run some second stringers out there in the second half or something, just because they can only move up or down so much, right? So it becomes a matter of prioritizing health versus your one or two seeds up or down. So we'll just try to talk through it as best as we can. But yeah, it is a really, really gross slate. I'll just say from a macro perspective, just looking at the slate as a whole, I don't think there's going to be hardly any guys that we can really project, to score 30 plus points like we normally do. Normally we've got like the Justin Jeffersons of the world, or, like the Philadelphia Eagles, like the Devontae Smiths and AJ Brown double stacks with Hurts sometimes can go nuclear. And, Philly's likely to obliterate the Giants this week. And once they get up by 3 scores, we could see what the Jags did last week, right? Jags, they scored 28 points in the first half, and then they bench their starters in a must-win game. So, you could see teams take that route. So I just think pulling guys from must-win situations is definitely the safest route to go, but there's definitely upside too, to kind of taking a chance on, a team like the Bengals. If they were to lose this week to Baltimore and they end up matched up against Baltimore in the wild card game, it goes to a coin toss for who gets home field advantage because of the Bengals playing one less game. So, it's a situation where, if the Bengals really want to guarantee at least having one home playoff game, which I think they will, then you could see them just run their starters out the entire game here. And especially, after not playing after the tragedy last week, them not playing pretty much a game at all. They played, 1.5 drives on offense and 1 drive on defense. If they were to sit their starters this week too, you're now looking at 2 straight weeks of not playing any starters really. So I think they're going to get their starters in there and get their guys reps, and they'll take the chance on injuries. So yeah, we'll try to do our best to get through this as best as we can. But yeah, it's a gross slate no matter how you chop it up.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you'd be concerned about is like how much are the other sides of some of these games really going to push them to have to put up a lot of points, right? Because like even like the Minnesota Chicago game, for example, like that's a great matchup for Minnesota, but like Chicago, no Justin Fields, so he's out, so that's pretty gross. Like they're not really gonna have to do a whole lot. I think they can play pretty conservatively and still win that game.
Which that sucks. Fields is out because he was only like 60 yards away from the rushing record for QB.
And then but then we have the same thing kind of on the Arizona game that. The Arizona San Francisco game, it's very similar to that, where, I mean, are you, I don't think you're all that concerned with Arizona putting up a lot of points. And looks like, what is it going to be? Chase McSorley or David Blau again at quarterback this week?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's David Blau playing again at quarterback, which, I mean, I guess he was okay last week.
He's no Jarrett Stidham.
No. So, like, I don't know, but that's why that's indicative of what we're seeing in the scores too. I mean, that's why there's no game.
Yeah.
I think the highest total game is 43.
Yep.
Um, and that comes from actually the Eagles game. That's just because the Eagles are 28.5 point, their implied point total on that game. I mean, I could definitely see it going under that as well because of the Giants, they're not playing any of their starters, and that
Mm-mm.
team's already barren in terms of offensive weapons. And so
Mm-hmm.
their starters are playing like it's gonna be real bad there. So
Yeah, like the Eagles team total is 28. They might hit that in the first half and then not score another point.
yeah.
Or do it with the backups to where those are not the guys you'd be playing anyways.
Yeah. So let's talk through this. Let's get to the quarterbacks like we always do. We go position by position here, and let's look at the quarterbacks. So up top, from the 8 down to the 6K range, we have Josh Allen at 8,400. Jalen Hurts is 82, and then you have Joe Burrow. Lamar Jackson's not playing, or likely not playing. I should say he's still questionable, but he hasn't practiced at all this week. He's not playing. Justin Herbert, and then you have Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Tom Brady, and Geno Smith wrapping up that range of upper tier quarterbacks. Are you paying up a quarterback this week, or are you going to look to pay down?
So the fact that when I mentioned that there's really nobody with 30 plus point upside on the slate, I was mainly referring to running backs and wide receivers and tight ends. I mean, Josh Allen is probably the lone guy outside of Burrow, if Burrow plays the whole game, that can get you 35 to 40 on the slate. So there's absolutely value in playing an $8,400 Josh Allen this week. And I mean, he's had good games against New England. If you pull up his game logs from New England games over the last 2 to 3 years, he's either been like in the low teens for DraftKings points, or he's been like in the mid 30s. So he's either smashed them, or he's, it's just not been a game where Buffalo scored a lot of points. But I think Buffalo comes out at home here, and this I honestly don't think the New England defense out on the road has been that good this year. They've been much better at home, and they also play in a division where they're playing against the Jets quarterbacks twice a year, and the Dolphins. They were with Teddy Bridgewater and banged up offensive line last week. So, the Patriots have had kind of an easy schedule as well. So I think it's a good spot for Buffalo to put up a ton of points. And they're one of the few really good offenses that we have that's actually playing for something this week. Because if they win, even if Kansas City wins on Saturday and Buffalo wins, if they meet each other in the conference championship, then it's at a neutral site, and that's big. Yeah, if Kansas City were to win on Saturday and then Buffalo loses, Kansas City gets the 1 seed and gets the home game in the championship game. So, Buffalo just winning this game could take away that Kansas City home field advantage to where it's played at a neutral site, and that I think that's absolutely worth everything playing for, regardless of what Kansas City does on Saturday. So, I think Buffalo is the one offense that I want a ton of exposure to. That's higher priced. And like I said, we're going to see limited 30-point scores on this slate. So if you get a 35 to 40-point Josh Allen game, you are going to be crushing the field because that is going to be one of the very few high end scores I think we get this week. So yeah, I absolutely love paying up for Josh Allen. Joe Burrow, I really like Burrow double stacks. If we get word that Cincinnati is going to run their guys out there for the whole game in like a scenario where they're going to try to win that game, that's their main focus. Because if they're just getting guys reps just to get reps, and they're going to pull them in the third quarter, then obviously don't want to pay 7-3 for Burrow. But if we get word, that Cincinnati's going to play to win and run their guys out there the whole time, Burrow nuked Baltimore both games last year. He broke the slate, both of them pretty much, and had that 40-point game. The second one where he threw for 500 yards and like 5 touchdowns. So Burrow's absolutely in play for ceiling here. And then, if one of those two guys doesn't go off, I think you just punt QB and try to get one of these cheap guys, like maybe Deshaun Watson in his last game of the year. Maybe they let him throw a little bit more because they're not really playing for anything now. So maybe they just let him have some more pass attempts. He's only 5,600, and the Cleveland pass catchers are very cheap. Like Peoples-Jones is 4,700 and Njoku's 39. So it's very, very cheap to fit those guys in together. And then you've got Geno Smith is another one, 6K, and his pieces are pretty cheap. Like DK Metcalf's only 6.7 and Lockett's 6.4. And I know Lockett's playing through an injury, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on. He's been questionable, missing practice this week. So, but Kenneth Walker has also been out of practice too. So if Walker's out, that's just another boost to Geno in a must-win game for Seattle. And then outside of that, you can take a shot on Sam Howell, 4,900. Has a very high rushing upside. Not Justin Fields high, but he ran for in the full game that he played in the preseason. He ran for like 62 yards, I think, off the top of my head. And he can sling it a little bit too. So yeah, I think Howell at 4,900 is definitely in play. But again, I don't think any of these value quarterbacks are going to match what Josh Allen or Joe Burrow could put up if they hit their ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree there. I don't necessarily, especially the Baltimore side of that Baltimore game, like especially being the divisional game, both have something that's still a little bit to play for here, and so I don't necessarily. I think it's a not a great matchup for them to hit the ceiling. We know Baltimore's a team that just really wants to run the football and kind of play gross, grinded out type of game. And so I think that probably limits, at least in terms of pace of play and all that stuff, or probably how high they can go. Now, of course, they can score quickly and stuff like that, but on their drives. But I think overall, like I'm less inclined to get to Joe Burrow if I was going to pay up. I think Dak Prescott does make some sense here. They do have still a little bit something to play for here in this spot as well. They could get as high, I believe, as the 2 seed. They could also still win the division if the Eagles were to lose. And so this is actually Washington is a team that's really started to struggle quite a bit on both sides of the ball. Really, they're over the last 4 weeks they're 23rd in pass DVOA. They're 28th against the run. Um, but it is against Sam Howell. So again, how much are they going to really have to push ball here or do a whole lot? Maybe they just lead on, Tony Pollard plays, which I expect him to, and then Ezekiel Elliott. You could definitely see more of that, but he's 6,600. I don't mind getting to him. But as far as the pay down options go, like I think there's some intriguing options down here. I know you talked about Sam Howell. Like Andy Dalton is kind of interesting at $4,800. Like the Carolina Panthers pass defense has been dreadful over the last 4 games. Like he was somebody like I was really high on the Bucks last week. I played a ton of Mike Evans last week in that matchup against the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are 30th in pass DVOA, but they're second in rush DVOA. We pretty much saw the Panthers, and that's kind of what the Bucks did. I mean, they pretty much kind of abandoned the run and they just went straight, and just threw it against them all day. Now, obviously, the Saints don't have the same weapons as the Bucks do, but I mean, still, the Bucks were an offense that looked. I mean, was not able to do anything against anybody all year, and then they just made the Bucks look. That is by far their best game we've seen them play all year. And again, it's not sexy, but he's only $4,800. And again, this game doesn't matter for really a whole lot on either side. But I still think Andy Dalton here could be somebody that we could look at if you're wanting to pay down, because I think there's some running backs on the other side that are in really good spots that maybe I would rather get to. And if you're wanting to do something like that, then I think going with like an Andy Dalton who can, have a little bit of a ceiling game. And if we don't expect, a lot of these teams to really put up, monster numbers, I definitely think that it's possible that we could see somebody like Andy Dalton, go out there and put up 20, 25, DraftKings points. And so getting to him, and it's a really cheap stack, it allows you to kind of unlock everything in what is just a terrific matchup at home against Carolina. So I know again that game doesn't matter for anything, and I know we kind of teams wanting to play a lot of teams that do have something to play for. But if you're wanting to get a little bit different with both these sides, don't really matter. I think that would be a pay down spot that I would really look at to attack, and maybe even a mini on that side you could also do as well. A mini stack there in that game, but I do like that as an option this week. Past that, like it's tough to really find like something that just really stands out to is just like, okay, this is a smash play, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
either I'm going to pay down or I'm going to pay all the way up to like a Josh Allen, because I know that game matters for both sides of this. New England it matters for Buffalo. Jalen Hurts, I think you could get there. He could still give you almost 30 DraftKings points in a half. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that offense is good enough that you could do that. Um, but I'm either going to pay up all the way to that because this mid tier range just doesn't stand out to me. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I really don't think the Chargers are going to do a whole lot here. Like there's not a whole lot they can
And they're
get
not
you.
even favored by Vegas. They're 2.5
Which
point
is crazy.
underdogs against Denver.
Yeah, Denver's actually the favorite here, a 2-point favorite.
So that should tell you all you need to know about the Chargers.
Yeah. And so, like, I'm not playing Justin Herbert at all, and I'll probably just avoid that game completely if I can. And then, like we said, like even like Kirk Cousins, who's like the matchup is fantastic in Chicago, but I don't think they're gonna have to do a whole lot, and I think you could see a lot of Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison in that game. So, like, if I'm paying up, I think that's where I'm going to is that top tier, and then if I'm paying down, I'm gonna try to find a spot here, like something like that, or even if Mike White plays, because you can see that the Jets want to play spoiler to the Dolphins, because the Dolphins still have a chance they can make the playoffs. If the Patriots lose, then and if the Dolphins win, then they're in. It sounds like maybe Teddy Bridgewater is going to play. He's been limited in both practices so far this week. We'll have to see on that. If not, it'd be Skylar Thompson. But if not, I mean, Mike White definitely has the ability to have a big game. We've seen it a little bit in a couple of games earlier in the year against Chicago and Minnesota, where he put up 27 and 22. He was a full participant today. Obviously, they don't have anything to play for, but I guarantee you the Jets would love to play spoiler to the Dolphins and knock them out. Because if the Bills win and the Dolphins lose, then it would actually be the Steelers would be the next team that could get in, and I would have some like medial interest depending on what the Browns do with their defense if they're missing any pieces at Kenny Pickett. But at the same time, like I don't think Kenny Pickett has much of a ceiling. Like he's been a guy that's kind of giving you like 12 to 13 DraftKings points pretty much every game.
They just want to run the ball.
He does have some rushing upside. Like he has games this year where he's rushed for 51 yards, a bunch of 30-yard performances. So he has some rushing upside. But I also think you probably just feed Najee.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's just no like real true standout spot in mine. I think you could also like maybe you look at this and maybe you just kind of forget about some of the stuff, and maybe if you're just going to go heavy into certain things, you just kind of forget that it's week 18 and you just play this straight up, right? So like if this was a normal week and like let's say this was week 12, you would look at Kirk Cousins and say this is a smash spot for Kirk Cousins, right? Like and this like and if you're playing in tournaments and large field stuff, if people are going to have this sort of mindset of, oh, well, I'm just going to avoid all these games and I'm not really going to play these guys, then maybe you can get an edge that way as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it really just depends on the type of player. I mean, because if you're going to play like a single entry or a 3-entry max, it probably doesn't make sense to go that route. But if you're looking at multi-inch or a bigger field tournament, then I think you would probably look to maybe do some of that stuff.
Yeah. I think I'm probably going to end up on Josh Allen just because I don't think anybody has his ceiling on the slate. So that's probably where I'm going to end up.
You're not wrong. I mean,
if he doesn't go off, I mean, it's going to be a gross low scoring slate, and I can still win with him anyways because I don't see any of these cheap guys really crushing. So the only one that I can maybe make a case for would be Deshaun Watson, just because of how cheap the Browns stack is. Because you don't really need a ton from them to really pay off their salaries, but that's assuming they throw the ball, considering he only had 18 pass attempts last week. So you'd be asking for a change in approach there on offense. Whereas, I know Josh Allen's going to be pretty much the entire offense in a game that they want to win, must-win game for Buffalo.
All right. Well, you want to jump over to running back?
Yeah, it's horrible. So why don't you take the first stab at running back and please tell me who to play, because all I see is Najee Harris and like maybe Tony Pollard, and outside of that, it is absolutely disgusting.
Well, I mean, obviously Christian McCaffrey is 100% in play. If they are
Elijah Mitchell's back,
even with Elijah Mitchell back, I still think Christian McCaffrey is in play. He is I think the guy that could break this slate, depending on how much run they want to give him.
I think the game has to stay close for him to hit his ceiling. Because like in each game that they've played with CMC, where they've won by, like they've had the game in control, the second running back has gotten a lot of touches and they've pulled CMC off the field. So I could see Mitchell getting a good decent chunk of run here, especially considering he hasn't taken a beating this year. I know he's been hurt, but I mean he's ready to go. It sounds like, and he's 4K. I don't know if you have interest in that.
So he said JT versus Houston. Yeah, if JT was playing.
Yeah, if he was.
But so we're going to get value opened up at running back this week, and I think that's probably where the conversation starts because like Zach Moss, right, is probably somebody at $5,200 against Houston. Though, like I've said, like Houston has not been as bad lately against the run. Now, again, I don't know. I would take it for what it's worth because we just saw ETN have over 100 yards, about like 10 carries against them last week. And the week before that, they allowed over 100 yards, but they are 23rd now in rush DVOA over the last 4 games instead of dead last. But they have truly been dreadful against the run this year. But Zach Moss figures probably to get a lot of run here. I mean, they have no reason to protect him or pull him off the field at this point, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously he's going to be a free agent, will be gone probably after this year. But he's somebody that could definitely see a lot. And this is like a funny game to me because this is the game that I don't think either one of these teams want to win. None of these teams want to win this game because the Bears can still get the 1 seed if the Texans lose and the Bears would win, then I think they would jump them and they would actually get the 1 seed. So the Texans don't want to win this game. And then right now the Colts are sitting, I believe, at the 5th seed, but they could get up to the 2nd or 3rd seed if they were to win, and then a couple teams ahead of them, or if they were to lose, then a couple teams ahead of them. So neither one of these teams want to win, though. Like I don't think either one of these teams really want to win. Like I wouldn't. Like if it was team, for draft pick purposes. But regardless of that, Zach Moss at $5,200 is somebody that I think should definitely be on people's radar, looking to play. Houston has, like we said, struggled against the run this year. I think some of the other spots you can look at is Cam Akers. He's played really well. Seattle struggled against the run as of recently. He's $6,200. As long as Kenneth Walker is good to go this week, if he's able to play, it is a great matchup. But he was held out. But it sounds like more of I know it was an ankle, but it was also more of an illness issue. I think they're probably just letting him rest. I expect him to play. It's a must-win game for them. And over the last 4 games, really, if you look at it, the the Rams side has been dreadful against the run. They're 27th in rush DVOA over their last 4 games. So they have really started to fall off. No, Aaron Donald has really struggled. And again, a must-win game for the Seahawks because they're not going to know because the Packers-Lions game, if it's going to come down to that for them. So if Seattle wins, Lions are eliminated, but the Packers still have to win that game to, get to the playoffs. So for Seattle, it's a must-win game for them. And so, $6,400 Kenneth Walker, I think, is a definite spot we can look to get to against a run defense that has really struggled. They're at home, good game environment. He is somebody that has, he's not heavily involved in the passing game. He does have weeks where he has 4 or 5 targets, but for the most part, he's not very, very involved. But he does have, since coming off that injury, he has back-to-back 100-plus yard games over the last couple of weeks. And so only thing that's really held back is he hasn't scored a touchdown, but I definitely think you could look for that here. So Kenneth Walker, I think, is a direction we could look to go as well if you want to do that. And like I already talked about Dalvin Cook a lot, this is a fantastic bet. Chicago's defense, I mean, it doesn't really matter, pass or on the ground, is dreadful. But the Chicago Bears defense is actually 32nd in rush DVOA, but kind of wild over the last 4 games. They're 32nd in rush DVOA, but they're 17th in pass DVOA. But again, a lot of it's just because teams just run all over them. And so I think that hypes up that number a little bit. But Dalvin Cook at $7,300, I think, is 100% in play as well if you're wanting to get a little bit different. Because I know everybody's going to want to play Najee. Cleveland is a run funnel. They are really bad against the run, but they've actually been pretty decent against the pass. So Najee Harris, $6,100, must-win game for Pittsburgh for them to have any hope of making the playoffs. Obviously, they need help. But, Najee Harris is another spot that obviously everybody's like, he seems to be the poster boy this week of everybody that wants to play him because of his price and everything else. And so I think I would rather just pivot off of Najee Harris and go to Kenneth Walker, who's just right there in the same range.
Yeah, I also like Tyler Algier, our boy from last week, 5,600 in a game that they're favored by a touchdown over Tampa Bay because Tampa Bay is not going to play any of their guys. So I know it's, typically we don't target running backs against Tampa, but, these teams love to give these young rookies a lot of run as the season winds down, especially the last week of the year. So I could easily see 25 touches for Algier here at 5,600. So I like him a lot as well.
Yeah, and I think so. Okay, so let's. So if we don't think, for example, if like the Chargers, maybe they don't play their starters at all, or maybe they're really limited, then I think like a guy like Joshua Kelly could actually be in play here as well. He's priced up a little bit more. I think, kind of maybe expecting some of this because he's a little bit pricier than what you probably would think that he would be, but he's still not bad in terms of his price. But again, if the Chargers kind of look to do that, the Broncos rush defense is actually their 29th in rush DVOA. So that's really where you want to attack them is on the ground. And so I do think somebody like Joshua Kelly, I think could be a little bit in play here as well if you're wanting to do something like that.
Same with Alexander Madison. I know you briefly mentioned his name, but if we get any word that the Vikings are going to do similar to what the Chargers are doing. I know the Vikings are still favored by over a touchdown, but I think that has a lot to do with Nathan Peterman being in a QB too, as opposed to Justin Fields. So, yeah, but yeah, if there's any word that that Dalvin's going to be split time or anything, I mean Madison at almost 5K. I mean he really only needs 15 carries and he can go for 100 yards and multiple touchdowns against that putrid Chicago defense. So. He's definitely somebody I'm keeping an eye on.
And have we heard anything either way about Tony Pollard? Is he expected to play this weekend?
I know he's a full participant. Yeah, he's good to go. And I know I mentioned this to you before we fired up the show, but Mike McCarthy is usually one to play his guys in week 8, with the last week of the season. He's not one to rest starters, so I would expect. Especially with the possibility that Dallas could overtake the Eagles if the Eagles were to lose to the Giants. I don't think that's going to happen, but the possibility is there. I mean, if you were Dallas and you just didn't play your guys, and then the Eagles ended up losing, like that would be something that Dallas never would never hear the end of. So, I think they play their guys. I think they play them pretty much the whole game. So yeah, Dallas is definitely a good spot to get exposure.
How would you feel about somebody like Keyshawn Vaughn, who's $4,700, for the Bucs going against Atlanta?
I mean, you have to have interest, assuming he's going to be the main guy, right? I would think it would be him and not Rachaad White, but considering White's a starter.
Yeah, and I definitely think they are going to sit Leonard Fournette. There's no
absolutely. I didn't know if White would maybe get the start and get run there, but if it's Keyshawn Vaughn, I mean, you have to have interest. Atlanta.
I think what could happen is with Rachaad White is maybe he's maybe the starter, and but maybe he plays like a limited series, maybe he plays a couple series, and then they yank him off the field, and then it's Keyshawn Vaughn playing because it's not. It's on.
Who's going to QB for Tampa Bay?
Isn't it Blaine Gabbert?
Is it? He's not a runner, is he?
God, can
he? I haven't looked at Blaine Gabbert's stats in a long time. I can't remember if he likes to check down to the running back or not. But I mean, really, at 4,700, if Vaughn's going to play pretty much the whole game, you have to have interest.
Oh, and that's just kind of what we're talking about though, with just like paying attention to the news, because I think it's going to be critical in winning this and taking down the slate is being really locked in and understanding like who's playing, what scenarios are going to play out here. Because I think it's gonna be crucial in this. Yeah, because Blaine Gabbert's the number 2. Like maybe they want to see what Kyle Trask can do, but who was drafted a couple of years ago, but in 2021. But I would assume they're gonna probably go with Blaine Gabbert. I would assume so. That's what would be my guess is what they're gonna do.
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't even be shocked. I think the starters have said that they're going to start the game, or Leftwich has said that the starters will play. But I think that he's going to pull them after only a couple series. And I know Brady needs it's a very low number to pass like his completions or something from last year. Like he needs like 9 or something. So that's something he could get on 2 drives and then just call it quits. Because we know Brady pays attention to the records because he got Gronk. He's mentioned in the past about getting Gronk like his catches and touchdowns in the last week of the year before. So. It's definitely stuff that they pay attention to. But yeah, I agree. Tampa Bay is a big one, considering they're 7-point underdogs to Atlanta. So that should tell you that the starters are even if they start, they're not going to play much.
No. And then, I mean, I think you also did, I guess, like Kenneth Gainwell would come into play at $4,300 for the Eagles if they're looking to, pull some of their starters and give some of these other guys some run. Kenneth Gainwell's $4,300. Like,
and he has a role like as it is, anyways. Like he can score even if that game were to be close. So that's not even a bad play as it is, because he's their third down back and 2-minute back.
right.
So like even if the Giants somehow kept it close and Miles Sanders is still in the game, Gainwell's still going to be utilized as it is. But then if we start to get into a blowout, I mean that's another guy that okay, let's put Sanders on ice. Let's let the younger guy go out there, and I guess they could give Boston Scott some carries too.
Yeah, I think you'd probably see some sort of rotation there with that. And then, I don't know, like Khalil Herbert is $4,600. Like,
Yeah, that's a good one.
David Montgomery is likely, out or not likely. He's a free agent after this year. He's likely not returning. So I don't know why you would run him into the ground. I could definitely see them maybe giving Khalil Herbert some run here, some extra run to kind of see how things would look with him. Obviously, he's gotten a lot of carries, and he was really good to start the year. Like he was actually over the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, like he actually played pretty well.
He's better than Montgomery.
He definitely is. I definitely think he's a better running back than David Montgomery is. But so I mean, he's $4,600. But again, I think we've talked about 47 players now.
Yeah.
But this is kind of like I kind of view this almost. It's kind of like a preseason slate, right?
Yep.
And like I said, like news is going to be crucial to all this. So just talking through some of who these guys you could look to possibly stick in here, I think is going to pay off quite a bit. But right now, if I'm paying up at running back, it's probably going to be to somebody like Dalvin Cook or Christian McCaffrey. And then from there, it's going to be Tony Pollard and Kenneth Walker. And then Ramondre Stevenson, I think, is also in play just because of how much he's utilized in the passing game. And he can just get peppered with targets.
Yep.
I believe the last time he played, what did he see? 8. Yeah, he saw 8 targets the last time they played. He just didn't find the end zone. But yeah, he was targeted 8 times in that game. So he's somebody that could see a lot of targets as well. He's $6,700. So let's go ahead and jump over to wide receiver. Unless there's any other running backs you want to hit on.
Nope, I'm good.
So at wide receiver, we got Justin Jefferson. He's 9,100. Tyreek's 86. Jamar Chase is 84. CeeDee Lamb's 82. AJ Brown 8K. Stephon Diggs, which seems really cheap for what he can do at $7,900. That feels like a pretty big discount. And then T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, who has been a baller. Mike Evans, who all of a sudden now is hyped up to $7,400 after his monster game last week. $7,400, but I doubt he plays all that much. And then you have Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin, Keenan Allen, Brandon Ayuk, Mike Williams, Tyler Lockett, Jerry Jeudy, Chris Olave, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, who is very questionable, Devo Smith, who's also questionable, wraps up the 6K and above guys. So why don't you start us off here? Who you looking to play here at wide receiver?
I like Diggs, especially if I'm playing Allen. I like both the Bengals guys, Chase and Higgins, are definitely in play because I think I'm going to take a guess that the Bengals play their guys, so I like them. Both Seattle guys are in play. I prefer DK, and DK's had success, especially against the Rams. He's kind of owned Jalen Ramsey a little bit. I think he's had in 2 of his last 3 games against the Rams, he scored over 27 DK points. So there's another 30-point guy that you could possibly have this week, and he's only 6.7K. So I really like DK Metcalf this week. Olave's in a good same spot that Mike Evans was just in last week. So yeah, I mean Olave's not he's a rookie, so he's not coming off the field. So I like him a lot. I mean, I guess if you play Josh Allen, you have to have interest in Gabe Davis. But I mean, a lot of these other high-priced guys, I don't see myself getting to. It's just because the situation is too uncertain for me to warrant paying a high price tag. But I mean, there's definitely value receivers. Drake London, 4,900 against Tampa. Peoples Jones, I mentioned the Cleveland stack is cheap. He's 4,700 against Pitt. Tyler Boyd, if you play Joe Burrow, he's in play at 4,600 against Baltimore. even though, I think Marlon Humphrey's been playing the slot recently. Maybe not since Marcus Peters has been out, but I'm pretty sure Humphrey's been in the slot. So if that's the case, Boyd is not somebody I'll have interest in. I'll just stick to Higgins and Chase. But there's definitely going to be some cheap receivers, I think, that are worth considering. I haven't done a deep dive into this, like 3 to 4K range yet, though, this week. I'm not sure if you have.
So I think if you're gonna pay, like if you're willing to pay down at wide receiver, I think that one name that does stand out that you could look to play is Rashid Shaheed. Like he's actually been involved, gotten more involved as in recent weeks. He has
True.
double-digit DK points 3 of his last 4 games. Saw 6 targets last week against Philadelphia, 6 catches, 79 yards in that game. And then because really the way you beat the Carolina, they are terrible against outside wide receivers, which is what got me on Mike Evans last week. I was like I said, like I played a massive amount of Mike Evans, and so it was a pretty good week for me because of it and because he was so low owned. But he'd been so terrible all year, it made sense. But Carolina has absolutely been annihilated by outside wide receivers. And then you also have the fact that J.C. Horn got put on IR, so like that just made it even worse. And so, like these outside speed guys is where I would want to get to, and I think that's where like Chris Olave you brought up, I think is a smash play at his price because of what Mike Evans can do. But I also think Rashid Shaheed is also a player that can do a lot of some of those similar things and take the top off. And so I think at $4,200, I think also he is squarely in play for me. I think both of those wide receivers are plays that I really want to get to because of the matchup here against Carolina at home inside the dome. No weather concern whatsoever there for that game either. So I do think both of those guys would be in play. As far as other, I think maybe you could look at maybe Russell Gage. Like I know Blaine Gabbert's not like great, but he's also not like there's definitely worse backup quarterbacks that he is. Guy as the third or fourth wide receiver game. He's $4,800 or $4,400, excuse me, again against the Lamb. A little bit of revenge narrative. I know they've already played once this year, but he's $4,400. Jahan Dotson, I think, is still in play, but it makes me a little less likely to get there with Sam Howell at quarterback, just because I don't think they're going to want to throw the ball that much. So I don't think I would want to get to that. Other than that, like as far as the cheap wide receiver, like the sub 4K guy goes, there's not a lot that stands out to me. Like I know like Elijah Moore is certainly a place we could go to. I talked about Mike White. Again, the Miami Dolphins have struggled against the pass. Has really been the thing that's really hurt them the most this year. They've been a much better run defense than they have against the like even over the last 4 games, it bears out. They're 4th in rush DVOA over the last 4 games, but they're 26th in pass DVOA over their last 4 games. So getting some access to these Jets wide receivers in a matchup that they can definitely win here. And so it's 30. He's Elijah Moore's $3,400. I think you could also talk about Garrett Wilson. He's also definitely in play in a matchup here against the Miami Dolphins. So if you're wanting to pay down, I also think Elijah Moore would be another spot I think we could look at as another pay down option here at wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm good with all that.
And then I guess another one. I guess maybe it's a little point chasey a little bit, but Tyquan Thornton saw 7 targets last week against their second round picks. Dude is, I think he had one of the fastest 40s in this in the combine over the last draft. But I think Devontae Parker might be back for this game, so I think he's probably not as enticing as maybe he would have been.
Yeah.
Other than that, like in terms of like some of the other guys, I didn't really talk about the top, but I think Tyreek Hill is still in play. I know it's not a great matchup. He's probably going to be seeing Sauce Gardner, but it's still Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill can break a slate anytime he's on the field. And it wasn't really a great spot for him last week. Only 7 targets last week for him for 55 yards, no touchdowns at all. But he still had, or excuse me, yeah, he did. I forgot I believe he had a rushing touchdown. But he scored 15.7 last week. But we know, I mean, if you want to talk about somebody that could break the slate at wide receiver, he's definitely the guy that can do it. I know it's not the best matchup against the Jets. The Jets pass defense has been really good, but Tyreek Hill is definitely always in play at $8,600. If you believe that the Minnesota Vikings are going to try to get Justin Jefferson the record, I think he could be in play at $9,100. But again, you're allocating a ton of salary. But if we get all this, but if we end up getting all this value open up, which is what's looking like it's possible to happen, it makes it a lot easier to stomach getting someone into Justin Jefferson at $9,100, who could definitely annihilate the Chicago Bears, right? Especially coming off the game he came off of last week. It wouldn't take a whole lot for him just to go absolutely nuclear.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I like both of those options. In terms of the middle range, I definitely agree. DK Metcalf, $6,700 is just entirely too cheap for the upside that he provides. And then from there, I think some other guys like DJ Moore, $6,100. He has played much better of recent with Sam Darnold at quarterback. Garrett Wilson's $5,800. That is too cheap. Gabe Davis could be the key to the slate at $5,400. I know he has been super volatile this year, and he's either boom or bust. He has a lot of really down games, but he's the guy that could give you 35. It's definitely in the range of possibility for him. He could catch a couple deep balls here. So Gabe Davis at $5,400, I'm gonna have some exposure to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you already mentioned Diggs is underpriced. I think Gabe's underpriced too, and you can double stack both of them with Josh Allen. I know, we don't always force in a double with Josh Allen just because he normally hits the ceiling with his legs. But I mean, just because of those guys are cheaper than they should be. Like, let's see, Gabe Davis he got up to 6,900 at one point this year, and now he's 54. And Diggs got up to 85 was his high, and now he's 79. So there's definitely a discount on these guys. There's not one on Josh Allen, but if Josh Allen hits the ceiling, at least one of these two will go with him. And definitely an upside for both of them, especially on a week where nobody's going to score points. So, if Buffalo scores 30 plus, even if one of the two guys doesn't go nuclear, I mean, they're still going to have a good game. And they won't really kill you. So yeah, I like both Buffalo receivers a lot.
I also think on the Joey Myers at $5,100, I think I think we could look there as well. In the slot is really where you wanted to attack the Bills.
Yep.
And so Jacoby Myers, he's $5,100. Deontay Johnson in a game that's a must win for them. He's $5,200. I would much rather play him than George Pickens. He's just routinely sees more targets than he does. He's kind of the safety valve between him and Patty Fry. So he's $5,200. I think you could look there. And then Drake London, since they've made the switch to Ritter, has started to see a lot more targets. Over his last 4 games, he's seeing targets of 12, 11, 9, and 8 over that span. They won last week, so they were able to control it a little bit, but against Arizona. But against the Saints on the road, they could definitely have to throw the ball a little bit more. So Drake London at $4,900, I think, is also is in play as terms of another option here in this 4K range up with Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yep, I agree.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at wide receiver this week. I'm not going to play the Chargers guys at all in this spot here against the Broncos. One, it's just a terrible spot. The Broncos have been excellent against perimeter wide receivers. That really doesn't make me want to play Mike Williams. And then I really don't know how much they're going to play at all. Regardless of that, we've already talked about that game. So other than that, I think we can jump over to tight end.
Yeah, I'm good to move to tight end.
So at tight end, we have George Kittle, who is $6K. Another decent spot for him last game. Another 8 targets for him with Brock Purdy. And then TJ Hawkinson's $5,700. Mark Andrews is $5,400. Dallas Goedert's $49. Cole Kmet's $46. Dalton Schultz is $45. Tyler Higbee's $4,400. Dawson Knox is $4,200. Gerald Everett's $41. And David Njoku is $3,900. And for whatever reason, Patty Fry is $3,800. I don't know why his price has went down as much. How involved he is in this offense, I don't know why he's not more in like at least the $4,500 range. So he's $3,800. Seems too cheap for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, both those guys, Njoku and Patty Fry. I know Njoku's had kind of some down games over the last 3, but his nuclear game he had earlier this year where he had 10 targets, 9 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown for 24 DK points did come against Pittsburgh. So $3,900 for Njoku is definitely in play. I like the Patty Freiermuth call. I know it's Cleveland's not been the best tight end matchup, but just, like you said, he's just been too involved in that offense. Tyler Conklin, 3,600 in tight end funnel defense of Miami. I know the Jets are not really in a must-win spot, but definitely looking to play spoiler against a division rival there. Conklin's definitely in consideration. If we think the Chargers are sitting their guys, which I do, Parham Jr. is 3,200. He's definitely a usable pass catcher there for the Chargers against Denver, who's struggled to cover the tight end position. I mean, the ghost of Tyler Higbee put up like 30 something DK points the other day against Denver. So Parham definitely could have a good game. Hayden Hurst, I don't know why he's $3,100. That seems way too cheap for his role that he's had in Cincinnati. He seems like the screaming value for me this week at tight end. And looking at his one game against Baltimore this year, 7 targets, 6 catches, 53 yards, and a score for 17 DK points. Sign me up for 17 DK points at $3,100. Definitely interested there. Cade Otton's interesting. Assuming Brady doesn't, I mean, even if the starters play, but I would assume Otton's still going to be on the field even with the backups, and we know backup QBs like to target the tight end. So Otton's interesting against an abysmal Atlanta defense that can't defend the tight end position. Jelani Woods can break any slate that he is the featured tight end for Indy. We've seen him go for like 100 yards and a score on a slate earlier this year, so he's good enough to be in consideration against Houston. That's just a terrible game all around, though. So I'm not sure how much exposure I want to get to that game, but those are really the tight ends that I'm looking at. I'm probably going to live in that the Hayden Hurst to Njoku range, 31 to 3,900.
I do think George Kittle's in play. Arizona is absolutely dreadful against tight ends. We saw him earlier in the year, back whenever he wasn't really doing a ton. Have a really good game against them, 84 yards and 2 scores. But he, like I said, over the last couple of games with Brock Purdy taking over at quarterback, he's seen 8 targets each of the last 2 games. He has now scored 5 touchdowns over his last 3 games. So George Kittle is 6K. You're definitely paying up for it and have to pay for it, but he still has the upside to be able to annihilate that price. And so George Kittle, if I'm going to pay up, I think he would be the spot that I would definitely look at. I would love to play Mark Andrews at $5,400, but I just can't. I know last week that he was better, 9 for 100 yards last week, no touchdown for him, only 5 touches on the year. Like I guess you could look at him, but like I don't know, like I just don't love it against Cincinnati. Um, so, like, I agree. I think some other cheap tight ends that you didn't bring up. I think Trey McBride at $3,300. It's not a great matchup against San Francisco, but he did see 10 targets last week with David Blau at quarterback. He's also quarterbacking again this week. He's only $3,300. So I definitely think we could take a look at him. And then Albert O. I guess he just decided to become relevant last week. Greg Dulcich is on IR. Albert O came back last week, scored 13.5 DK points, was targeted 6 times in that game, 3 catches for 45 yards and a score. So Albert O, he's only $2,900. I think is a spot you can look at. And then I actually think Jelani Woods is actually a pretty sharp call, especially if Kyle Granson is out. Kylan Granson is out, who he missed practice yesterday. I think that helps the ceiling a little bit for Jelani Woods as well. And Jelani Woods has had a couple of games this year where he's looked really good. He had a 2 touchdown game against Kansas City earlier in the season, and then week 12 against Pittsburgh, he had 8 for 98 in that game for 17.8. So he can definitely get there. I don't know why they don't utilize him more, but they run so many tight ends out there. He definitely should be somebody that's more involved in that offense. He's actually looked pretty good in limited opportunities this year. So I think I definitely agree with that call. But Trey McBride and Albert O, I think, are the other 2 that I really wanted to hit on that I definitely think we can look at. And then also Tyler Higbee for the Rams. He's only $4,400, and Seattle is also just terrible against tight ends on the season. So, and Tyler Higbee is still too cheap at $4,400. They don't really have a whole lot else you really can throw the ball to because, I mean, it's Van Jefferson and Skoronix on IR. I mean, they just have nobody. Tutu Atwell and, all these other smaller wide receivers. So Higbee, I think at $4,400 in a matchup against Seattle, that they would love to play. Spoiler too. I mean, they've just been dreadful against tight ends. They allow the most DK points to the position this year. So with Arizona being second, in that. So we always want to target tight ends against Seattle and Arizona. So I think Higbee would also definitely be in play. You were on mute.
Oh yeah, sorry. There's definitely a lot of tight ends that are definitely in play this week, which is not something we normally say.
No, not usually. Not usually. So those are the tight ends that I want to play. Is there anybody else you want to hit on, or you want to jump over to defense?
I'm good to move to defense.
All right. So what cheap defense are we paying down for this week?
I like the Broncos. You could sell me on the Falcons, but I like the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean the Broncos definitely. Yeah, $2,500. I think that is certainly a spot we could get to. I think the Jets at $2,600 also makes some sense as well. They are pretty cheap. I think those would probably be the two that I would mostly look at here. Even the Vikings against Chicago with Nathan Peterman, but they're going to be steamed up at $2,900. It's like very much like the 49ers, but then the 49ers burned everybody last week that played them.
They did.
Because that was the one that we both looked at. We're like, oh my God, they are way too cheap. Oh yeah, we're just locking in the 49ers. And of course, Jarrett fucking Stidham comes out of nowhere and just drops 350 yards and 3 touchdowns against them.
Drop the hammer on them.
Yeah. So, but the Vikings are $2,900. So with Nathan Peterman, the guy that threw was it like 6 interceptions against the Bills all those years ago?
Yeah.
Or no, it was against the Chargers, wasn't it? Yeah, it was against the Chargers.
Yeah, it was.
He was playing.
That was 5 interceptions in the first half.
Yeah. That's right. He was playing for the Bills, not the Chargers. He was playing against the Chargers. But yeah, so there's that as well. The Vikings, I don't know why they're only $2,900, but I'm guessing that was probably with the thought of Justin Fields playing.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah. So I think those are kind of the defenses that I'm looking at playing. Is there anybody else?
No, I don't think you need to go outside of those cheap ones. Atlanta against backups in Tampa, Denver against possible backups in the Chargers, the Jets against a possible backup QB for Miami. Could be not Teddy Bridgewater too. Could be Skylar Thompson, and then if you've got the $2,900, Minnesota makes a ton of sense against Nathan Peterman as well.
All right. So the funnest part of this show is now let's build this lineup that we do every single week.
I don't even know where to start.
So let's build a lineup. This is gonna be fun.
I mean, do we just play Josh Allen just because of his ceiling?
I'm fine with that. Let's go.
All right.
Let's go, Gabe.
Okay. Let's go. Let's go. Tyler Algier, running back.
All right, I'm going to lock in Kenneth Walker at $6,400.
Okay. Hayden Hurst, tight end.
So we have 2 wide receivers and a flex and defense left. 5.275 remaining. I'm just going to go ahead and play a defense here, and let's go with. I'm gonna go with the Broncos. Let's go $2,500. So that's $6,200 remaining for 2 wide receivers and a flex.
All right, let's throw Olave in. Get a little crazy.
You know what? I'm gonna do a little mini, and I'm gonna go with, you already have Algier, so never mind. But you already got that. I was gonna do London, but I don't want to play 2 Falcons. You know what? I'm gonna go. Let's go Garrett Wilson, $5,800. So at least $6,600 remaining at the flex.
Just drop defense to Falcons and play DK Metcalf. Is my vote.
You want to play 2 Seahawks?
Yeah, I'm good with it. They're in a must-win. That's their entire offense too. Is both those guys.
I think you could also, if you don't want to do that, you could also look at maybe Ramondre at $6,700 as a run back of the Buffalo stack. But let's lock in DK Metcalf. So with no dollars remaining, we have Josh Allen, Tyler Algier, Kenneth Walker, Gabe Davis, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Hunter Hurst, and then DK Metcalf and Falcons D with no money remaining. And that is the team for Week 18. Listen, the name of the game this week is going to be play light,
Yeah,
and listen to the news, and play a lot on Saturday. Have fun Saturday, because Saturday is gonna be the fun. Because the Chiefs slate,
save your bankroll for the wild card slate next week.
Yes, yeah,
do that.
Because I will say the Chiefs slate, the Chiefs game looks like that. The Chiefs Raiders games are always excellent. They're always super high scoring, one way or the other. Whether the Chiefs just steamroll them or the Raiders are able to keep it close. I know the Raiders would love to play spoiler here too, and the Chiefs have just played down to everybody they played recently. They just play down to them and they turn the ball over. So, but that game I think it has like a 52 or a 53 point total on it. The Chiefs are obviously the highest implied point total on the slate, but still, that game could go nuclear. It's inside, and then the Saturday night game, the Jaguars Texans. I think that could be a little bit more closer of a game, but it's looking like we're going to get another Josh Dobbs game. I don't expect that to happen twice, what we saw last week, because he actually looked pretty good, and he almost knocked off the Cowboys.
He did.
It was looking a little.
He actually didn't look bad.
No, but I don't.
Granted, they didn't have Derrick Henry, so their game plan was to throw a little bit more. But I mean, he really didn't look bad.
No, so that slate actually looks like a lot of fun, and then we get the Sunday night game, Packers Lions, which I think that even if the Seahawks win, the Lions are eliminated. I fully expect the Lions to come out and try to beat the Packers to knock them off. And
absolutely.
They're rivals. So the showdown slate for that one could also be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that game as well. But moral of the story is play light this week. Don't talk yourself into playing a bunch of money. That's what I always tell myself every year we get to week 18, and I end up playing more than what I want. But that's what I'm going to try to do this weekend. Because the playoffs, I was looking at some of the matchups, and man, like next weekend's wild card round could be awesome. Like there could be a lot of really good games and a lot of really good offenses. So I am looking forward to that.
Yeah, because there's only one team that gets a bye in both conferences. So
yeah, and so there could be a lot of really good matchups next week. So I am looking forward to that, and it's always because it's a lot easier to kind of hone in, kind of dig a little bit deeper on some of these games. Take stands on these playoff games, especially wild card round and divisional round are the two best for me, the ones that I like the most. So I am looking forward to both of those slates. So
I agree.
Yeah. So
I agree.
Save your bankroll. Don't get wild this weekend. Don't get drunk and put in a bunch of money Saturday night. All these teams, because it's not great in these streets. There's no high totals. Pay attention to the news and get some edge. So that being said, I appreciate everybody rocking with us all year. But we're not going anywhere. We're going to do we're going to do all the playoffs. We usually do the Super Bowl as well. We usually go through and talk about the showdown slate for that. So we'll be here all the way through midway through February. So we're not going anywhere. We'll be here every week for that. Next week's slate will be much more enticing than what this one is as well. So hope everybody has a good time. Hope everybody has a good weekend. Hope everybody maybe win a little bit of money. Don't go crazy. Stay off the booze. And just don't build a bunch of lineups this weekend. Okay, don't do it. You're gonna regret it because it's
you don't have to stay off the booze. Just don't build a bunch of lineups if you do.
yeah. Just avoid it. Just give your phone or log out, shut off your computer for the night. And just don't do it because it can get real rough with that slate. So yeah. Because you're going to be hating it. You're going to have this lineup. You're going to think it's great, and the next thing you know, teams are pulling their starters out, and you're cussing it because you only got one half of the Eagles or whatever. So yeah, just Just don't do it. So, anyways, have a good rest of the weekend. We'll be back here again next week. Have some fun. I am really looking forward to it next weekend. It's what I love NFL playoff DFS. I thoroughly enjoy it. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I'm gonna quit rambling. It's been an hour. I can't believe we went an hour on the slate, but we did. Anyways, have a good night. Bye.
Peace.